Okay, so today's lesson is 9-5. It's factoring to solve quadratic equations. We're going to be using first two examples is using zero product property. Okay, it looks like what they gave us was we're going to solve x plus 5 times 2x minus 6 is equal to 0. So write that down. And how you do this, it's already factored for us. So all we have to do is rewrite our problem as x plus 5 is equal to 0, and then 2x minus 6 is equal to 0. And then you're just going to solve for x. So we have subtract 5, subtract 5, so our x is equal to negative 5. And then we're going to add 6, add 6. So now we have 2x is equal to 6. Divide by 2, divide by 2, and we have an x is equal to 3. Okay, and if we plug those in, just to show you that the values we found will solve for this, we have negative 5 plus 5 times 2 times negative 5 minus 6, is that equals 0? And negative 5 and 5 is 0. And then I have times, this is negative 10. Negative 10 and 6 is negative 16. But I already know it equals to 0 because anything times 0 is 0. So we checked our answer there. And again, you don't have to do this each time. I'm just kind of showing you that that's what we're doing. We're solving for that to come up with the 0. And if I do the other one, I'll do the other one up here. We have x plus 5. Oh, but we'll make the x a 3. So that's what the other x is. So 3 plus 5 times 2 times 3 minus 6. Does that equal 0? So I have 6 minus 6, which is 0. And then no matter what this answer is, it's 8. But 8 times 0 is 0, so 0 is equal to 0. And I checked my work. Those two x's are the value for this x here. Okay, so what we've been doing is we've been factoring quadratic equations, and now we're going to use part of that factoring when we get our parentheses, two parentheses, and we're going to solve it. So we factor, then sometimes you solve. So this one, we're going to set these both to 0. We have x minus 4 is equal to 0, and then we just solve like you've been doing for quite a while now. Subtract 7, subtract 7. We have x is equal to negative 7. Add 4, add 4. X is equal to 4. Okay, so those are your two answers there. Okay, now we're going to do the next part of this. We are going to solve by factoring. So this one, we didn't have to do any work to start with. Get rid of that. We didn't have to do any work to start with. Oh boy, sorry. These two were already in parentheses, and these two are already in parentheses. Now if we look down here, there's no parentheses yet. We need to factor to get our parentheses. So we know how to factor now. First of all, is there anything that I can take out? No. Is it a perfect square trinomial? I'll take square root of the first term? No. Is it a difference of squares? No. So that means I can do my x. Do I need to do my box? I don't. So first times the last is 8, and it adds up to be 6. Why don't I do the box? Because this has a coefficient of 1 here. So two numbers that multiply together to give me 8, add together to give me 6. So 4 and 2. And I just put my parentheses, x plus 4, and then x plus 2. Okay, we know how to do that already. The next part that's new is just now to set these both up to equal 0. I guess we're supposed to put is equal to 0 here. And then x plus 2 is equal to 0. Then you're just going to subtract 4, So I have x is equal to negative 4, and subtract 2, x is equal to negative 2. So that's my answer right here. And if I plug them in, negative 2 and 2, that's 0. And then negative 4 and 4, that's 0. Okay, next one. Okay, do I have a factor? Do I have two parentheses? I don't. I should set this to 0. The last one was set to 0 for us. I'll set this to 0. I'm going to solve. Can I take anything out? I can't. Is it a difference of squares? It's not. Is it a perfect square trinomial? No, because I don't know what the square root of 48 is. So I do the x. Do I need the box? I don't, because this has a coefficient of 1 and negative 8. I do know that one's positive and one's negative. Okay, so I have 48. Two numbers that multiply together to give me 48, but add together to give me negative 8. How about 12 and 4? That gives me 48. One's going to be negative, one's going to be positive, so I think it's going to be negative 12 and positive 4. Because when I add those together, I get negative 8. When I multiply them together, I get negative 48. Okay, so now I got my parentheses. It's going to be x plus 4 and then x minus 12. Set that to 0 and just do the math now. X plus 4 is equal to 0 and x minus 12 is equal to 0. Okay, subtract 4, x is equal to negative 4, add 12, x is equal to positive 12. And there's my answer choices here. And if I were to plug those in there, 12 minus 12 is 0, and negative 4 plus 4 is negative 4. Alright, next part. I look at these two problems at the bottom. First one, I can't factor it yet because it's not a trinomial. Let's move this 36 to the other side. So I now got x squared minus 12x plus 36 is equal to 0. Because in order to solve, you need to set it to 0. And so now my trinomial's set to 0. Is there anything to factor out? No. Is it a difference of squares? No. Is it a perfect square trinomial? Well, the square root of the first x squared is x. The square root of 36 is 6. Okay, then I'm going to test. 6 times x is 6x. 6 times 2 is 12. It's a perfect square trinomial. Put your negative there, your parentheses, square it. Okay, so it's a perfect square trinomial. Now I can rewrite it as x minus 6 is equal to 0 and x minus 6 is equal to 0. And then you're going to add 6. So I have x is equal to 6. And I really don't have to do this side, but I'll go ahead and do it for you. So we have our x is equal to 6. We just need one of them, and it's just that answer. Okay? And the last one. First of all, we need to set this to 0, so I need to add 5 to both sides. So I have 3x squared plus 16x plus 5 is equal to 0. Okay, first of all, now can anything be taken out? And it can't, because there's nothing. 3 times nothing is 16. No x can be taken out. Is it a perfect square trinomial? No. So now it's just an x and a box. Why the box? Because there's a 3 at the very beginning of our coefficient right here. Okay, so first times the last. 3 times 5 is 15. Add together to give me 16. Hopefully you see it's 15 and 1. Put your variables with that. Your first term goes here. Your last term goes here, positive 5. these two can go wherever you want to put them. Okay, now we're going to factor. I'm going to factor this way. What do they have in common? Nothing, just a 1. What do these have in common? There's an x. There's also a 3. Okay, now let's find another color. Let's do this one. How about this way? What do they have in common? Just an x. And then what do these have in common? A 5. Okay, and our sign comes from each of these boxes. They're both positive. That's a positive and that's a positive. So now we have x, or 3x plus 1. And we're going to set that to 0. And x plus 5. And we're going to set that to 0. Okay, so now, last part. I'm going to subtract 1, subtract 1. So I have 3x is equal to negative 1. Divide by 3, divide by 3. And I'm going to move it down just a little bit. We have our x is equal to negative 1 over 3. And then subtract 5, subtract 5. We have x is equal to negative 5. Okay, so these are our two answers. If I plugged them back up there, I would see that they give us 0. Okay, so that was 9-5, solving quadratic equations by factoring. Factoring to solve quadratic equations.